Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're completely deconstructing the evolution of an absolute legend, Zinedine Zidane. We're going to chart this wild, fascinating journey, taking him from a raw and honestly pretty temperamental street talent to a graceful footballing god, and then, ultimately, a mastermind manager who totally conquered Europe from the sidelines.
You know, Thierry Henry really hit the nail on the head back in 2005 when Zidane came out of international retirement. I mean, just listen to this. What I am going to say may sound over the top, but it's the truth. God exists and he has returned to the France team. Wow, that perfectly captures the almost mythical reverence his peers had for him. When Zizou stepped onto the pitch, it's like the other 10 players just magically got better. But you know, this divine status, it didn't just appear out of thin air.
We really have to ask ourselves, how did a young boy named Yazid, growing up in the notoriously tough La Castellane neighborhood of Marseille, actually reach this level? Picture this. As a kid, he learned his entire trade on a tiny 80 by 12-yard plaza, suspending his Algerian-French identity right between two cultures. He was incredibly raw, very sensitive, and, well, he had a fierce temper. Actually, at his first club, Cannes, he was constantly forced to clean boots as a punishment. Why? Because he kept punching opponents who mocked his ghetto origins. So how in the world did that boy become the maestro?
Well, let's look at year zero forging the maestro.
So, when he arrived in Italy for the 1996 season, he was in for a massive culture shock. Juventus had this fitness coach, Giampiero Ventrone, who had the terrifying nickname Professor Marine. And get this, Ventrone would literally hang a bell of shame right by the training pitch in Pinzolo. It was there for one reason: to be rung by any player who just couldn't handle the agonizingly grueling sessions and wanted to quit. Brutal, right?
But here's the thing. Zidane never rang that bell. Not once. He was pushed to the absolute edge of his physical limits, though. He said often I would be at the point of vomiting by the end because I was so tired. He would literally be dry heaving by the practice pitches, but he just kept pushing through. This entirely transformed his work ethic, forging this relentless, absolute winning mentality. He even admitted later that before Italy, football was just about having fun, but after Turin, that desire to win just completely took over the whole shebang.
It wasn't just about fitness, though. It was tactical. At first, Zidane really struggled in a super rigid 4-3-3 system. The Italian press even roasted him a bit, calling him a cross-country runner lost in a pack of sprinters. Ouch. But then Antonio Conte ruptured his knee ligaments, and manager Marcello Lippi was forced to shift tactics to a 4-4-2. This moved Zidane forward into a classic number 10 role, right behind the attack. And from there, oh man, he just exploded. He orchestrated this famous 4-1 rout of Ajax in the 1997 Champions League semifinal, completely cementing his status as one of the best players on the planet.
Which brings us to the masterpiece, Glasgow 2002.
Just try to imagine the sheer weight of expectations on his shoulders at this point. In 2001, he transferred to Real Madrid for a mind-boggling world record fee. We're talking 150 billion Italian lira, which is roughly 77.5 million euros. He was the absolute crown jewel of the Galacticos era, joining megastars like Luis Figo, Roberto Carlos, and Raul. The pressure on him to deliver the ultimate prize in European football was just astronomically immense.
Let's slow down time for a second to really appreciate the anatomy of his legendary goal against Bayer Leverkusen. Step 1, Roberto Carlos sends this looping cross that just hangs in the air for what feels like an absolute eternity. Step 2 is all about the weight. Zidane shows this supreme spatial awareness. He lingers right inside the 18-yard box, eyes laser-focused, and he perfectly adjusts his body. Then step 3, despite being a naturally right-footed player, he unleashes a flawless left-footed volley that absolutely rockets straight into the top corner. No way any keeper is stopping that.
That single strike completely cemented his legacy as a true physical artist. The journalist Sid Lowe famously said Zidane was football's answer to the Bolshoi Ballet. Elegance above all else. And that is so spot on. It wasn't just a powerful shot, it was like watching Bruce Lee in slow motion, right in the middle of all this kung fu chaos. Just a total, absolute masterclass in balance and technique.
Now let's fast forward to the conductor's final symphony.
So quarterfinal of the 2006 World Cup, playing against the reigning champions Brazil. It took Zidane exactly 35 seconds to completely toy with their entire midfield. 35 seconds. One single turn left Roberto and Kaká literally grabbing at thin air. For the rest of that match, he was like a puppet master. Pirouetting in the middle of the pitch, dropping deep, drifting out left, he was entirely dictating the tempo. And then, to top it off, he floats a perfect free kick to assist Thierry Henry's winning goal. It wasn't just a game, it was a pure footballing clinic.
But then, we get to the final against Italy, which completely laid bare his tragic duality. The contrast here is honestly jarring. In the 7th minute, he opens the scoring with this incredibly graceful, supremely confident Panenka penalty that literally kisses the crossbar before dropping in. Pure magic. But then, the 110th minute of extra time. His entire career ends with a fiery, completely shocking red card headbutt to the chest of Marco Materazzi, right after Materazzi insulted Zidane's sister. That was actually the 14th red card of his career. A really raw, intense reminder of that fierce temper he developed way back on the streets of La Castellane.
From there, we enter a whole new chapter, the managerial mastermind.
The sheer speed of his managerial success was completely unprecedented. I mean, just look at this timeline. Appointed head coach in January 2016 after managing the B team, and bam, he instantly leads Real Madrid to La Undécima, their 11th Champions League title. But he didn't stop there. He defended it in 2017 and then went and won it again in 2018, becoming the very first coach to win the Champions League 3 times in a row. That's a tactical feat that left the entire footballing world absolutely stunned.
Now, this historic success wasn't just luck, guys. It was a masterclass in leadership built directly on some very solid core pillars. He brought serious tactical flexibility to the table, essentially repopularizing the 4-4-2 diamond and always seeming to make these crazy game-changing substitutions. But perhaps more importantly, he demanded strict discipline while somehow building deep, mutual respect in a locker room that was filled to the brim with massive global egos. He just knew how to empower his players to find their own superiority on the pitch.
Zidane actually summarized his own role perfectly, and pretty humbly, saying, "My job was to keep people calm." It's so true, though. By leveraging his own massive prestige and this quiet, undeniable authority, he basically acted like a giant umbrella. He shielded his players from the totally relentless media pressure of Madrid, which just allowed them to go out there and execute their game plans flawlessly.
So, what really is the legacy of Zizou?
I'm going to leave you with this final thought to ponder. Zinedine Zidane is literally one of only 10 players in history to have won the World Cup, the Champions League, and the Ballon d'Or. He was a flawless, elegant dancer on the ball, but he also had this fiery, street-hardened passion that definitely boiled over from time to time. And then, as if that wasn't enough, he seamlessly transitions into one of the most masterful managers in football history. So, which of these facets best defines his legacy for you? Is it the elegance, the passion, or the absolute tactical mastery? Whatever you decide, I hope you take away a deeper understanding of the brilliant, complex, and totally undeniable genius of Zizou. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and we'll catch you next time.